very, very pleased with the way that the Ukrainians and this deal today turned out. And we hope that this will continue in a long and everlasting peace. That's President Trump's goal, and we hope we can deliver on that goal.
President Donald Trump's 25% tariff increase on all steel and aluminum imports officially took effect today. The latest move in the administration's plans to reshape global trade norms in favor of U.S. manufacturing.
The tariffs are having a tremendously positive impact. They will have, and they are having. We have car companies that are not building in Mexico now. They're building in the United States. Some of them, the plants were already started, and they stopped construction, and now they're going to build in the United States.
White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told reporters Tuesday that Secretary of State Marco Rubio reserves the right to revoke former Columbia grad student Mahmoud Khalil's green card or visa. Leavitt said that under the Immigration and Nationality Act, the Secretary of State has the right to revoke a green card or visa for individuals who are adversarial to the foreign policy and national security interests in the United States of America. Leo Terrell, senior counsel to the Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, says this person is an enemy of the U.S. and needs to be treated as such.
This individual is not protected by free speech. He is a foreign national. It is a privilege. The American government gave him the right to come into this country as a privilege, not as a right. And the bottom line is this: the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, has the authority to have him deported if his conduct is adverse to the foreign policy of the United States government. I would submit to you that anti-Semitism behavior is contrary to the American foreign policy, and supporting Hamas is contrary to American foreign policy. There is overwhelming evidence to remove this foreign national from America.
A New York University's theology department thought it was useful recently to hold a discussion on, quote, queer possibilities of black religion.
Fordham University in New York recently held a discussion about a book titled Jimmy's Faith, James Baldwin, Disidentification, and the Queer Possibilities of Black Religion. Campus Reform's Zachary Marshall.
I think it's a lot of nonsense, so I'm not surprised you don't know what to make of it, because it really is just a bunch of nothing. I think there's a trend that's been going on for a while among scholars. They want to queer everything the way restaurants wanted to put truffle salt on everything for a few years. It's enough, and we need to move past it.
Campus Reform reports the Theology Department's Racial Justice and Equity Concerns Committee put on this event with the book's author, Dr. Christopher Hunt. Hunt notably identifies as a black queer person and a former Christian. He also lists his preferred pronouns. The book in question here is about James Baldwin, a gay black writer and activist. Campus Reform says the author, quote, demonstrates the ways in which James Baldwin disidentifies with and queers black Christian language and theology throughout his literary corpus. Marshall clarified he himself is Jewish, not Christian, but he said he thinks there's enough cultural commonalities between the two faiths where he can see what's really going on here.
I can see that these people who are trying to push a queer understanding of God and of Christianity are not really taking their religion seriously. This just is not Christianity or any religion that I recognize. I think this is just a hobby and pastime of these practitioners that they're trying to pass off as academic research when it's nonsense.
I'm Bronson Woodruff.
More news online at afn.net and on the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
If we lose this cultural war, we're going to have a hedonistic, humanistic society.
Discover the story of the culture warrior Don Wildmon and how he went head-to-head with Hollywood, Playboy, the homosexual agenda, and the Disney empire. The movement Don started paved the way for Christians to boldly stand for truth and righteousness in a hostile culture. Watch Culture Warrior today for free. Visit culturewarrior.movie.
Welcome to Today's Issues, offering a Christian response to the issues of the day. Here's your host, Tim Wildmon, President of the American Family Association.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network for this Wednesday, March the 12th, 2025. Thanks for listening to AFR, and I will introduce our panel here. As I said, you can decide later on if they're distinguished or not based on their performance today. Ed Vitagliano, good morning, Ed.
Hey, good morning. I'm just happy to be on a panel.
Well, that's a
I
good
don't have
start.
doesn't that be distinguished or not?
No, a good attitude's a good start. Ed.
That's right.
Wesley Wildmon, good morning, Wesley.
Good morning. You said performance. I feel like I need to be, I don't know, singing
we
or
have
dancing.
expectations here. Dancing, singing?
You
No.
can.
No, not that kind of
You want to
performance.
sing? You go ahead.
Fred Jackson, good morning, Fred.
Good to be here.
All right, so much to talk about on the program today. Jenna Ellis will be joining us at the bottom of the hour, and we will ask her, how is it that President Trump and his administration can close down the Federal Department of Education? Because that's what he is seeking to do. And I stand and applaud, as I know you guys do too. We don't need no stinking.
We don't need no stinking Department of Education.
That's what I was hoping would happen when I said that. We don't need a department. We don't need a federal Department of Education. It's a completely unnecessary level of bureaucracy. I'm sure there's some fine people that work there, but
On both sides.
but I think on both sides. I think President Trump is right. Pardon me. We need to take the money that we would otherwise spend on the Department of Education and send it directly to the states and let them spend it as they see fit and do away with this D.C. bureaucracy.
Now, how can that literally for both camps?
How can be against that?
How could you? Now, it's one thing I could hear. First of all, if they just canceled it or
Abolished it.
dismantled it altogether, and then spent the money elsewhere, I'd be okay with that too. But for those, it would say, yeah, but what about, state well, if they just give it to the states and let them, I don't know. It's got to be an 80% approval on
Well, I
this.
tell you who'd be opposed to it, the people, the bureaucracy.
Sure, but it's just not enough people.
They want education run from Washington, D.C.
Yes.
So they can control it.
But that's just a
But anyway,
small enough amount that I don't think that's going to
right.
make a difference.
We'll do a deeper dive into that with Jenna Ellis at the bottom of the hour. Gentlemen, I have some breaking news that'll break your heart.
You ain't got rid of the head cold?
Well, that's a different story. I trudge on. Can you trudge?
You can. Oh yeah.
I'm trudging on.
I trudge.
I got a shot.
I've been trudging for years.
By the way, Ed, you're still suffering for a little bit of the after effects of that walking. See,
Walking pneumonia.
Get old
funny.
people talking about their health, and we're totally diverted from what I was.
And my knee has been bothering me.
There you
So.
see what I'm saying? The weather's coming, and
Yep.
back will be going out on you. Anyway, it's good to have you back. I know
Yes.
you were sick the whole week last week.
That's right. Doing much better.
Well, you had walking pneumonia, right?
Yes, walking pneumonia.
What's as opposed to what?
Sitting there.
We're just regular pneumonia. I think they call it atypical pneumonia.
Which would you rather have if you had to choose them?
Walking pneumonia.
Walking.
With regular pneumonia, you're in much
You go to the
greater
hospital.
danger. You can. But I had fever and chills and terrible cough.
But that's completely over, right?
Yes.
'Cause you
With
need
the
a-
exception of the fever, I may be a little bit contagious, but
like a little
no,
bit.
no.
That's like a little bit pregnant.
I haven't had fever since last Thursday.
A little
But
bit contagious, sitting 2 feet from me.
I'd like to advocate
Yeah.
for Maxwell Smart's cone of silence.
Yeah, we don't.
Cone of disease control.
Yes, we don't need any more information. I shouldn't have asked you that. I violated your HIPAA law.
I feel
Did I violate his HIPAA law?
my hip feels violated right now. Thanks a lot.
Okay, now back to my breaking news.
Yes, I want to hear this.
Which will break your heart if you have one.
We better weep.
That's
Hollywood
all for debate.
celebrity Rosie O'Donnell. Rosie O'Donnell has moved to Ireland because she's escaping Trump's America.
Yeah.
And she wants to remain safe. You see what I mean?
Yes. Oh, listen. I'm devastated.
You're devastated, Wesley. Yeah. Look at Wesley's face.
That's the look of devastation.
Look at Fred. Fred's hurt.
I'm trying to perform, okay, and be devastated.
Yes.
But I cannot.
Do we have Rosie O'Donnell's comments at all? I know Steve may bring them in next hour.
I think maybe so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, anyway,
We have a clip.
I have Rosie.
He's got it.
Okay.
Yes, comment.
I just think as we need to hear her departing words.
Yes.
Because she is.
We need to take this to heart.
She's a fellow American.
Yes.
And leading the way.
She's leading the way for other Hollywood celebrities who vowed to leave should Trump be elected president. And I think she's the first to officially go. And here's her remarks from Ireland.
Well, hey, everybody. It's me, Rosie O'Donnell, star of the Flintstones. It's Tuesday all day, as my Nana would say. And I'm here in Ireland. And it's beautiful and warm. Not physically, it's actually quite cold. Yeah. Moved here on January 15th. And it's been pretty wonderful, I have to say. In the process of getting my Irish citizenship, as I have Irish grandparents, and I was never someone who thought I would move to another country. That's what I decided would be the best for myself and my 12-year-old child.
Okay.
Look, okay, if the one thing you have to brag about is that you were the star of the Flintstones,
that's what I thought too.
You should just
leave
say
that
nothing
out.
at all.
No, you're right.
Listen. I actually feel badly for her. Okay, I've seen pictures of her, like we all do. She's getting old.
Right.
In terms of entertainment, she's irrelevant. She's in terms of entertainment, has done more than I have. But the point is, this woman is sad. This is a sad soul who has taken the election of another political party to heart to such an extent that she left the country in fear. Yeah. And it's pathetic, and I'm not saying it in an insulting way.
Well,
these are people whose only joy in life is this earth, and it ain't going the way she wants, and so she's in Ireland. And I don't think she's going to be there as long as she thinks she is.
Well, and it's worse than that when you think about other places around the world that are suffering. In many places, like in Syria, Christians are suffering.
Yes.
And being murdered and slaughtered. And then other parts of the world, people are suffering financially from socialism and medicine and hospital. I mean, there's so much worse going on around the world that people are genuinely suffering from, and she makes it out to be that America under Trump is anything like these other places.
She has TDS,
sure.
Severe case.
Yeah.
But, so I've instructed our staff here, just to lower the flag.
Half-mast,
and to remember Rosie.
Rosie,
as she
Rosie O'Donnell. She's gone to Ireland.
She finds. Hopefully, she can find 2 or 3 different pubs. You know what I'm saying? Because one pub would get old. All right,
some of these small. Your point is
hamlets over there in Ireland.
Little hamlets, little villages.
Yeah, she'll be back,
and it's quaint for a while.
Yeah.
But if you've got to drive an hour and a half to the nearest Irish version of
dodging leprechauns
yes.
in the street, I mean, that gets old.
Yeah.
Tell me that doesn't get old. And there's no pot of gold.
There's no pot of gold.
That's
I've tried finding it.
That's not true. That's a myth. All right. So anyway, having a little fun there. We just hope.
I hope she does lead others.
Hope she has a great life there in Ireland. Rosie O'Donnell, ladies and gentlemen, star of the Flintstones.
She reminds us.
She wanted.
That was that kind of took me. Like I was willing to listen to what she was about to say, but then that was a distraction.
Yeah, I know. I think it was
star of the Flintstones.
Star of the Flintstones.
Not just I appeared in the Flintstones.
All right, Fred, what do you have for us leading the news? I just wanted to get the Rosie O'Donnell story out of the way because
it's huge.
That's huge, and that wasn't very careful, Ed.
All right. It's only been a couple of weeks since we saw the verbal brawl in the Oval Office.
Which one, Rosie O'Donnell and Donald Trump?
No, this was Donald Trump and the president of Ukraine.
Oh, yeah, that Donnie Brook.
Yes, and it looked like, the wheels had fallen off any relationship between Ukraine and U.S. Well, yesterday, and I think we talked about this, there was a meeting in Saudi Arabia. Our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, was there along with representatives of Ukraine. After that Oval Office brawl, there was an announcement from Trump that he was cutting off military aid and also helping Ukraine gather intelligence. Well, coming out of the meeting yesterday in Saudi Arabia, two big announcements that the military aid will resume, U.S. intelligence aid would resume, but also they agreed on a ceasefire. Ukraine has agreed on a ceasefire. Of course, it is all still dependent on Russia going along with this. We have a little bit from our Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, who was at that meeting. Cut number 3.
Today, we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. We'll take this offer now to the Russians, and we hope that they'll say yes, to peace. The ball is now in their court.
And Dan Hoffman, who's a former CIA station chief, he says, really, this is Russia's last chance in this. Cut number 4.
Right. Russia could have stopped the war at any time. Remember, they were the aggressor. They invaded Ukraine, and their objective was to topple the government in Kyiv and install their own regime. So I think the president is right in saying, look, this is your chance, Russia, last best chance, or else we will increase our support to Ukraine. The president was pretty clear about that. And I think it's going to have to be support on the battlefield with more weapons and even more intelligence sharing. That would drive home the point to Putin that there's no point in continuing the war. But we'll have to see how Putin responds.
Who are we listening to right there?
That was Dan Hoffman. He is a former CIA station chief. Fox uses him quite a bit. And to the Russia point, we understand that a representative of the Trump administration will be meeting in the same room with Putin in the next perhaps 48 hours.
Is that Secretary of State?
No,
Marco Rubio?
No, a representative. One of his Trump's negotiators that he's been using.
Steve Jordahl texted me and said that Marco Rubio is actually, I'm not making a joke here, is actually in Ireland, where Rosie O'Donnell is. I think that's
trying to get her back. Trying to get her to negotiate.
I think it's
back?
on something completely different.
Okay.
You guys remember? This is before your time, Wesley. Remember Super Balls growing up? Those hard rubber balls. You could throw it off a couple of walls and it would just bounce wickedly, just everywhere. That's what this situation reminds me of. This has been back and forth so many times. It's been jarring. First, Zelensky's, in the White House, and he and President Trump, the Donnybrook. Then he goes over to Europe. You have all those leaders meeting. Then Zelensky does want to maybe have, and now we're at a place where if Russia pushes things, I have no doubt that Trump will start rearming Ukraine.
Yeah.
And with the mood that we saw in Europe, who knows what they'll put up or shut up kind of thing in terms of money and troops. This now is in Russia. The ball is now in Russia's court. And I hope they come to a deal.
Where are y'all getting the idea that Trump's going to rearm Ukraine?
That's
yeah. He had, in the wake of that White House disaster meeting, Trump said we're going to stop sending military aid to Ukraine, and we're going to stop helping them with intelligence gathering. As a result of what happened in Saudi Arabia in the last 48 hours, he says he's resuming that aid. Now, what that means, we don't know.
Okay. Maybe Wesley knows the answer to this question. I don't know. Wesley, you're about as hardcore MAGA guys are in this room right here.
Yes, sir.
I mean, we're liberals compared to you.
You notice I didn't apologize or try to.
No, I know you don't. I know you don't. So, my question unto thee is:
you got 10 minutes to answer.
Well, you follow the Make America Great movement. Listen, I'm not
You just asked a question.
I'm asking a question. the people, because of the conservative movement is larger than the MAGA movement, even though the MAGA movement is a significant political movement within the conservative side of politics. They overlap for the most part. Here's my question. I thought the MAGA position is no more money for Ukraine, period. We don't care if Russia takes over. Sorry to hear that, but that ain't our fight. Is that not the MAGA position?
Yes.
By most of the people within the movement? Or then what is now MAGA can be whatever Trump says it is.
That was going to be my.
Because he's the king of MAGA.
I was going to say that.
So the followers will come along with whatever he says usually.
Yeah, and that would distinguish between a MAGA and a conservative.
Yeah. Okay. So anyway, I'm surprised that Trump is saying anything relative to.
Well,
we're going to give you more aid.
There's one other point in this story. It's the rare minerals. It's the rare minerals.
Oh, the deal?
Which Trump wants to get his hands on. And apparently, it is possible Zelensky is going to return to Washington. They're going to have a big signing ceremony as part of the ceasefire agreement, but also to sign a deal on these rare metals.
Yeah, I think, first of all, you're right, Tim, that MAGA is whatever Trump says it is, because MAGA exists because of Donald Trump. I think that Trump is playing the consummate deal maker. He said no intelligence, no money to Ukraine in order to try to get them to the table.
Right.
And the assumption was that Putin doesn't want Russians in the meat grinder anymore either, but Putin is a sly fox. And so he's trying to play his cards. And so Trump, if Putin says, we're not ready to deal yet, then I think what Donald Trump's going to do is he's going to come back and say, well, fine, here's kind of the art of the deal thing. Then we are going to continue to give money and intelligence until you come to the table.
But in all of that, the MAGA would also not be okay with that unless we also get in that situation, unless we got something from Ukraine.
Yes, because it's make America. It's put America first,
which is different than the first round. But when Biden was in office and MAGA was saying we don't want to be a part of,
right?
We want to pull out altogether. We don't want to give our money. Well, if we're going to, in that situation, we're at least getting something out of Ukraine, which is the minerals and metal. So you're still getting something out of it,
and that would fit with the put America first.
It would be, and I would also argue that in doing that, I still believe that Trump does. If that all played out, I still believe that Trump's motive would be to do that in order to end the war. That's his goal, whereas I don't believe that the previous administration had any goal of ending it.
Well, we'll see what happens because it's all on the Vladimir Putin now, too.
It is now.
It is.
It is now, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He can either keep it going or he can say, here are my conditions to end it.
Yes.
The war with Ukraine.
Yeah.
And so, some of this from the Ukrainian point of view is this is why they've pushed for inclusion in NATO. They want some protection in case Putin does this again. And from Putin's perspective, he doesn't want NATO on their doorstep because you could put troops in Ukraine, and from his point of view, you could launch an offensive if you wanted to invade. So a lot of this is going to come down to how the West guarantees Ukraine's safety and how Russia guarantees its having a buffer zone between itself and NATO.
Yeah, but in order to end the war, don't you think that Ukraine is going to have to give up a third of their country?
Yeah, whatever the percentage is, they're going to have to.
Yeah.
They're going to have to say goodbye to Crimea forever, and what's called the Donbass region, which is that in the east. And I'm not sure where a lot of the minerals are. The minerals,
the center part.
Center part. All right.
Yeah. All right. So we'll see what happens there. But the big step there now is the response from Putin after he meets with the U.S. delegation. And Trump said he, called him on the phone, probably.
Uh-huh.
Trump himself, I'm talking about.
No doubt.
Called him on the phone. Anyway, you're listening to today's issues on the American Family Radio Network. Well, the whole world. By the way, did you see where Putin is getting soldiers shipped in from North Korea?
That's been ongoing, though.
Yeah.
That was 6 months ago
while,
they started.
But and this is not funny because people die. Okay,
Right.
I don't mean to make light of death.
Yeah.
Especially like in this war, but the reports on the ground were that these North Korean soldiers, by the way, who have no choice in life,
Right.
you're talking about
dictatorship.
You're talking about destined for despair.
Mm-hmm.
They have food and shelter only because they're in the military.
That's right.
That's right.
In North Korea. Okay, and they don't really have any real training in warfare, ground-to-ground warfare.
Mm-hmm.
Ground-to-ground, is that what anyway, okay, so Putin got, what's the guy's name over there, Kim Jong-un?
Yeah.
To send him soldiers, like they're toy soldiers.
Yeah.
You know, just send me 5,000, 10,000. So North Korea, an ally of Russia, sends these soldiers over there. They put them up there on the front line.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know what they're doing. They're in a completely, totally unfamiliar part of the world, and they've never been in live war combat.
Probably very little
The
training.
training is basically high stepping in front of.
Yeah.
So what they were saying, they were just fodder for the Ukrainians. They were running around like ants with no really purpose or mission. The Ukrainian guy said, basically, I feel sorry for them because we just slaughtered them.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if they're sending any more over there, but I thought that's interesting that Putin is recruiting soldiers from North Korea. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Probably to use them to soak up some of the damage that let the Ukrainians
like
use
fodder.
their missiles. Yeah, fodder. And for North Korea, for their military, they're probably thinking this will give our troops experience in case we ever go to war with South Korea.
What is
It's the wrong kind of experience.
What is North Korea getting out of that? I mean, in all seriousness.
I don't know.
I mean, what was it? I'm just wondering, is there a deal that's been made that is public knowledge?
I don't think.
They may get some oil or energy from natural gas or something from
and you never know in the minds of a dictator, like in North Korea, he does treat these people like toy soldiers. Yeah, we'll show what we're made of. We are not just this little not landlocked, but this small country here. We're projecting power. And you're going to see what North Korean soldiers can do. So
plus Russia could have paid them.
That's what I'm saying. I haven't read any.
Russia could have paid them. They're basically mercenaries. You know, for Russia, could have paid them in oil or gas or.
But it is
cash
sad because like you said, these soldiers. They're not fighting for their homeland. They're not fighting for any lofty principles.
They're sitting over there to die.
They don't want to get a bullet in the head.
Back home.
So they back home.
Yeah. All right. We will be back with more of today's issues on the American Family Radio Network after decades of many people in this country wanting a smaller federal government. That dream is finally coming true with the work of Elon Musk and also of President Donald Trump. And we'll talk about the Department of Education after this time out.
It's my turn.
Here is your host for My Turn, Don Wildmon.
Jesus said, and we find it in Matthew, the 7th chapter, "For the gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." You know, one thing a person learns early about life is that it wasn't meant to be easy. From the moment the baby leaves the protection of the mother's security, it begins to cry. And from that moment on, life never lets up on its demands on those who try to take it seriously. Now, basically, there are two attitudes one can take toward life. One is the take care of myself, don't care too much about the other person, don't get too involved attitude. And this is by far the most traveled road of life for the simple reason that it places no demands upon us that we don't want. We can do as we please or not do as we please. We're content just to live our lives out, patting ourselves on the back, telling ourselves we're doing all that we should be doing. But there's another attitude toward life. That attitude says life is a sacred trust given to us by the Eternal Father, and that it should be used for the benefit of Him and our fellow man. This way of living is very demanding. Very few are those who are willing to strive toward this life. It places demands upon us that we don't want, causes us to strive toward what the masses call the impossible. This is often a very lonely way of living, since those who have common goals are few in number. Many times we're tempted to give it up, to call it quits, to say with a carefree lot that it's an impossibility to live toward that high calling. We're tempted to lower our goals, tone down our plea, and think more about ourselves. But then we ultimately come back to this. Life isn't supposed to be easy. It is supposed to be a challenge. And the very moment we cease working toward that high calling, we begin to deteriorate into nothing but a self-satisfied, selfish human that joins the don't-care crowd. When we get to the place where we're ready to throw in the towel and call it quits, what we really need is to know that what we're doing has some eternal, lasting significance to it. For as long as a person can believe that what he is doing has God's stamp of approval on it, he can face any obstacle that stands before him. But once he quits believing in his high calling, he's doomed to a life of selfishness. Sometimes the night gets dark, awful dark, and you begin to question whether or not you should forget that high calling. For your job becomes hard and you see very little chance of it getting any easier in the future. In times like that, the only thing that will sustain one is the knowledge that what he is doing has God's approval, and that his efforts will not be in vain, and that his God will gladly pour out his grace on those who need it. Life is easy only when we're selfish. It is hard when we choose the high road. And while it gets to be awful dark sometimes on the high road, we need to remember that daylight always follows darkness.
This has been My Turn with Don Wildmon, a production of the American Family Association.
In him we were also chosen, having been predestined according to the plan of him who works out everything in conformity with the purpose of his will. Ephesians 1:11.
American Family Radio. This is Today's Issues. Email your comments to comments@afr.net. Past broadcasts of Today's Issues are available for listening and viewing in the archive at afr.net. Now, back to more of Today's Issues.
Hey, welcome back, everybody, to the radio program Today's Issues on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. Tim, Ed, Wesley, and Fred here this morning. Ed, you want to tell folks how they can listen to us on a podcast or listen to us on an app or something, things of that nature?
Sure, things of that nature.
Yes.
Well, first of all, for the app, you just simply go to your app store and download the AFR app, and you can listen to American Family Radio live or the podcasts anywhere you have a good signal. And in terms
good internet connection.
Good internet connection. And in terms of the podcast, if you go to afr.net, you'll see at the top a panel of drop-down menus. Just click on podcast, and the available podcasts will pop up. And then you can click on the show that you'd like to catch up on. And there are all sorts of options in terms of how far back you can go for different programs. And our podcasts, Tim, as you've mentioned, have been a kind of a game changer. A lot of people appreciate listening on demand. Sometimes they're at work when their favorite show comes on. They can listen to it on the way home or later on in the day. And AFR has a great selection of those podcasts for you to listen to.
All right. Well, President Trump has announced that he wants to close down the Federal Department of Education in Washington, D.C., and you can drive by their building up there. I forgot if it's on Constitution or Independence. I think it's Independence. But anyway, they got a big old building up there in Washington, D.C., and they do stuff. I assume they do stuff when they come into work.
Hey, indoctrination is hard work.
It's hard work. So President Trump has said we don't need any Department of Education anymore. I want to close it down. Well, can he really do that? Can a president unilaterally decide to close down a federal agency like the Department of Education? And Jenna Ellis has the answer to that question. Mm-hmm. And Jenna joins us now. She's host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning on American Family Radio from 7 to 8 o'clock Central Time. And she's the host of On Demand Podcast, speaking of podcast, at afr.net. And she's a constitutional lawyer. Good morning, Jenna.
Good morning, Tim. And I think the Department of Education building is on Unconstitutional Avenue in D.C.
Yeah, that's good. I see what you did there.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they do have a big old building, don't they?
That's their correct address. Yeah, they do, unfortunately. And it's about to be very hollowed out because according to the New York Times this morning, last night, the Trump administration fired more than 1,000 workers at the Department of Education. So basically, he's gutting it completely. And the Department of Ed Secretary, Linda McMahon, has said that it's her mission to completely dismantle the department as she is the secretary. But the constitutional question, of course, is whether Trump can unilaterally just completely dismantle it or whether this would take another act of Congress, because the Congress is the one that created the department. Now, my position, and I think the position of any originalist or constitutionalist when looking at the Constitution, education is not a subject matter that is given to Congress to legislate on or to the federal government at all. You can look at Article 1, Section 8. Those are the subject matter that are specifically provided to Congress. They can't just say, well, we think we know what's best for America and legislate on anything they want. That's the limited powers of the federal government under the understanding of federalism, that we give specific limited powers to the federal government, specific limited powers to the states, and then according to the 9th and 10th Amendment, all powers not reserved to the federal or state government are reserved to who? We the people. We actually have powers of government. So education as a subject matter is not at all anything that Congress can spend money on, but of course they went ahead and did that anyway. So I think that if Trump really wants to do this, he should attack the Department of Ed from that threshold question to say that the origination of the Department of Ed was unconstitutional at its inception, but then get the current Congress and hopefully with a better conservative majority after the midterms next year to simply reverse the act, and that would be the easiest way to completely get rid of the Department of Ed.
I got a question. This is Wesley here, Jenna. Thanks for being on with us. So let's just take a 30,000-foot view here for just a second. If he does what he says he's going to do, well, he's already laid off 1,300 employees. Is that right?
Yeah, right. Out of like 4,100 or something.
Yeah,
it is.
So he's already in progress of dismantling the Department of Education. What about this for the other side when they say, well, then it's obvious that he's opposed to education? What's the response to that?
Well, that's of course just a leftist talking point, and I would direct listeners to my interview with Florida's education secretary, and he lays this out really well, saying as a state education secretary, this actually means that we get to make decisions without federal dollars attached. And this is actually better for education. And I just had Corey DeAngelis, who is one of the best advocates for school choice, on yesterday on my morning program. And he's talking about a bill that's coming up before the Texas legislature wanting school vouchers, and how the teachers unions and then, of course, the leftists in the federal government don't want school choice period. They don't want dollars to actually follow students and families so that parents can make the best decisions for themselves, for their kids, for their families. They want dollars to follow wherever the federal government designates they should, which we shouldn't even call it public schools. We should call it government-funded institutions, because that's what they really are. They're indoctrination camps. And so if the federal government or the federal agency, the Department of Ed, is disbanded, this actually means more freedom and choice for individual families, but also for the states who can spend money on education to not have to abide by federal government indoctrination policies, DEI hiring practices, which is a huge push of the Trump admin. All of that goes away. And so for red states in particular, this would be monumental in a very good way. But even for blue states, it's really good for families across America.
Yeah, I think the move, even in some blue states, is toward more school choice.
Mm-hmm, that's right.
And
It is.
in charter schools and letting people go to Christian schools if they want to without penalizing them. I think that is where the momentum is in this country. The teachers' unions have had their heyday, and I just don't think they hold as much sway as they used to. And also the move away from Washington, D.C. and centralized government. That's a big part of the MAGA agenda. So I think the time is now to move, and I think President Trump is – I don't even think he needed Elon Musk to do any front work for him on this one, did he? He just said we need to close it down. Didn't he say that?
No. Yeah, I mean, this was a promise from his first term, and he didn't really obviously achieve that fully. I mean, I think that he made a little bit of headway, but not ultimately that much. And so this is a carryover promise from his first term. And so I don't think it's a matter of seeing where the money is being spent recklessly or frivolously. It's a matter of just shutting it down completely. And to your point, Tim, one of the few silver linings during the whole COVID narrative was that so many more families were forced to at least try homeschooling. And according to some research, homeschooling by choice has increased around 400% across the country because, shocker, when parents actually see that it's easy with the resources that are available today, especially online, but then when they actually get to spend more time with their kids, they like it, and they like being disciples and discipling their kids and actually raising them in the fear and admonition of the Lord. And it's a very good thing that has come out. And I think what we're seeing with this momentum is really a direct consequence of COVID, when the left shut down schools for so long that parents looked for other options.
That's right.
Well, and they also, when they did start back, they were online and they saw what was being taught.
Yeah, absolutely.
That was another.
Red, you had a question?
Yeah, I did.
I mean,
Jenna,
Ed?
I was listening to your program on the way into work this morning. I've been listening this week. It's very good. You have great guests on. You do a great job. One of the concerns I have, and I was listening this morning on your Maha guest talking about Make America Healthy Again. But one of the concerns I have. Now, I'm all in favor of what President Trump is doing, the Department of Education, all of that. My problem is that the American people for so long have accepted this extra constitutional authority that the federal government has grabbed. So I was listening, I think it was this morning's guest, in terms of all the regulations on poultry products and food products. Was that this morning, I think? I think it was.
Yes. Yeah, Raw Egg Nationalist, who's kind of an anon, but he's very well versed in this issue.
We've all accepted the fact that the government can tell us what to do. I remember I know a person who is a dairy farmer here in Northeast Mississippi, and he said, you would not believe the number of hoops we have to jump through just to produce milk, the amount of sunlight the cows have to have when they're being milked, and they come in and they're heavily regulated. But the American people have accepted this. How hard is it going to be to dismantle federal oversight over every area of our lives if the people do not understand that this is unconstitutional power?
Yeah, that's such a great question and a great perspective. And speaking of education, it really comes down to Americans who say, they're very sincere, passionate patriots to, yes, have passion for America, but understand what our highest law of the land requires of the federal government, which is to be limited in its power. The rise of the administrative state and the bloated bureaucracy is so far past anything our founders not just didn't intend, but ultimately didn't grant. They just simply do not have the authority. I mean, if you look at executive agencies, and even if you look at congressional legislation and all of these federal laws, I mean, it's probably somewhere around 99.9% of what they're doing is actually not power granted to them. And this was Hamilton's argument this is why he's my favorite founder, by the way, in Federalist 84, where he talks about we don't even need a Bill of Rights. Now, obviously, I'm happy we have one because that's protected our God-given rights throughout the last 250 years. But his point remains that we did not give over our rights in exchange for government protection. So then the government tells us which rights we actually have that they grant to us. Like some of the other world leaders in other societies, they said the people retain all of our rights that are God-given. They're pre-political. With our consent and with our will, we give and grant specific limited powers to the government to operate for the sole express purpose of protecting those rights. And so why are we telling Congress that it can't limit freedom of the press when we've given it no power to do that? And we need to get back as American patriots. We need to get back to the understanding that government is supposed to be very limited, understand the concepts of federalism. This is why 10 years ago I wrote my book called The Legal Basis for a Moral Constitution, because I go in depth into all of this and explain to the everyday conservative, this is why we have to get back to limited government and understand that. I think what Trump is doing is great, but we need to understand at the outset, before we even talk about policy, the difference between what the Constitution actually allows and what the government has been doing for the last 100 years.
All right, Jenna Ellis joining us. Jenna is host of Jenna Ellis in the Morning. That's her own radio program right here on AFR. So if you want to hear that, it's weekday mornings from 7:05 to 8 o'clock Central Time. And then, Jenna, your podcast drops how many times a week, once or twice?
Once a week, every Friday. And speaking of all of this, my guest this week is Congressman Chip Roy. He's going to be talking about the bloated budget, the continuing resolution, codifying Trump's wins. And so that's going to drop this Friday, and it'll be a great episode with a true conservative champion. Okay,
so folks, if you want to listen to Jenna's podcast and sign up for that, go to afr.net and click on podcast.
And there will be two separate podcasts, though. There'll be one for
daily show,
Jenna Ellis in the morning, her daily show, and then her on-demand podcast,
which is a deeper dive into the issues.
Yes.
So her on-demand, Jenna Ellis on demand. Sign up for that because you want to listen to Jenna's coverage of the news in a more lengthy format on that podcast. Also, Jenna, you wrote a column explaining the Department of Education, and we put that on our Today's Issues Facebook page.
Yes, so this is in American Family News, and I also do a weekly opinion piece in American Family News, so you can find that every Friday as well. This one is titled, Can Trump Dismantle the Department of Education? He certainly wants to.
All right, thank you, Jenna. Have a great day. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks, guys. Always appreciate it.
Okay, bye-bye. That's Jenna Ellis, who's part of our team here at American Family Radio. All right, what's your next story, Fred?
Well, just want to add a few details to the subject of what's going on with the Department of Education. Yesterday, the department sent an email to all of its employees in Washington and in regional offices telling them not to show up for work today. All the buildings are shut down. They said the only reason given was closures was unspecified security reasons, but it's connected to the layoffs. And by the way, the department also announced it's terminating leases on buildings in cities, including New York, Boston, Chicago, and Cleveland. He's serious about this.
Absolutely. And Randy Weingartner, the president of the American Federation for Teachers, she's losing her mind over this. So.
Yes. Bless her heart.
Yeah.
Hey, along these lines, I'm going to read a story that Alice and I were talking about last night. My wife and I, she was reading it to me. And I don't have any more information on this one than I'm about to read, but I'm going to read it straight from the Fox News website, okay? But it's related to what we're talking about and what Trump is doing and Elon Musk in finding waste, fraud, and abuse, and also as much as he can, that is President Trump and his administration, shutting down these left-wing outfits that pose as our government.
Yeah.
But they're really left-wing activist organizations and outfits, I say. So I'm just going to read this as it appears on the headline is EPA terminates Biden administration's green grants worth $20 billion, Zeldin says.
Yep.
Have you already talked about this? Or do you?
No, I was reading
that in your stack of stuff? Okay. All right. Listen to this. The Environmental Protection Agency, everybody's heard of that one, haven't we? That's a 3-letter agency we've all heard of, is terminating $20 billion in grants awarded by the Biden administration for climate and clean energy products, Administrator Lee Zeldin announced Tuesday. Now, Lee Zeldin is over the EPA on behalf of President Trump and the Trump administration. So you got me?
Right.
So the good guy is there.
Yes.
Okay, that's what I'm going to point out. And this is what he's discovered. In a video post to X, Zeldin said $20 billion in U.S. tax dollars were, quote, listen to this now, parked at an outside financial institution in a deliberate effort to limit government oversight, doling out your money through just 8 pass-through, politically connected, unqualified, and in some cases brand new NGOs. NGOs, that means non-government organization, right?
Correct. Non-governmental.
Okay. The money, Zeldin says, has since been frozen, noting that the Department of Justice and FBI are investigating. Okay, so what you got going on here, according to Lee Zeldin, I'll just paraphrase it. I encourage everybody to go read this article. It's at Fox News, and it's but this is the kind of stuff that is just so infuriating, and we knew it was all going on. What Biden did, listen, they gave $20 billion, and according to him, it all goes to these green activist outfits.
Yes.
Okay, that's what it's designed.
To other countries, or
it's
within
it's a slush fund for all the environmental wackos, as Rush Limbaugh would call them. They're all far lefties in carbon emissions, in coal, and fossil fuels. These are the same. All these groups. Well, Biden wanted to give them $20 billion through the APA. Tell me if I'm not correct about what I just read. So, but the most concerning part about this to me is that by the way, conservative groups, they have to find their own money through private donations or foundations or individual gifts. These left-wingers, they get their money from the federal government. And that happens over and over and over and over again. And this
to spend as they see fit.
Huh?
Yes.
To spend as they see fit.
And this is part of what they're so mad about Elon Musk uncovering all this stuff, because he's pointing a lot of this out. And so anyway, but what Z. Zeldin is saying, the reason the Department of Justice now and the FBI are getting involved, and he's asking them to, is because he says this money was being laundered. Basically, in other words, it was he called it, quote, parked at an outside financial institution.
Yeah, probably gaining interest.
In a deliberate effort to limit government oversight. This is like Hillary Clinton did with her emails. You remember that when she was Secretary of State? She said, I put my server in my house because I didn't want government oversight of what I was doing. That's basically what this is, $20 billion he's discovered. That was to go to all these green organizations.
Some of which popped up out of nowhere in the waning months of the Biden administration.
Yes.
In other words, to take advantage
of
this money.
This is so corrupt.
Yeah.
It's like, no wonder Biden pardoned his whole family from birth to death. But listen to just listen to this, and then I'll be quiet about this. But is my voice rising?
It's rising, and it should rise.
Should it rise?
Because seriously,
I'm trying to keep
this is
all things considered voice,
corrupt.
from NPR here, but I just can't do it when I start reading these things, and my blood pressure elevates. Listen, here are the groups, Wesley, to answer your question. Here are the names of the groups that were supposed to get this $20 billion of our federal tax dollars through the APA that they were trying to hide from the public. The 8 nonprofits that were awarded, and I laugh at nonprofits, these groups, were awarded the money, included the, ready for this? First one was the Coalition for Green Capital. Well, where do you think they stand for? The second one was Climate United Fund. The third one was Power Forward Communities. The fourth one was Opportunity Finance Network. The next one was Inclusive, INCLUSIV, and the Justice Climate Fund. Oh, you know, these are pink-haired people with nose rings. I'm telling you, these organizations have partnered with various groups, including Rewiring America, Habitat for Humanity, and the Community Preservation Corporation. There are far lefties who believe in controlling America, shutting down America's.
And they don't want us knowing how much of that money they're actually spending on their own mission. Just like a BLM when we uncovered that they didn't even actually.
They bought mansions.
If you want to, I'm not against these organizations existing, although I think they are all environmental wackos. Go raise your own money.
Yes.
Go raise your own money. Don't try to take it from the federal tax dollars.
Look, now I'm not talking about these specific groups because I don't know and I don't want to get sued. However, what is the possibility of this kind of abuse where you have these outside groups outside the Biden administration saying, hey, give us some money, we will create an organization, and then we'll figure out some stuff to do with it.
Yes.
Meanwhile, we'll have a CEO or a director or whatever getting paid big bucks, and they're essentially looking for a few things to do so they can take government money.
Yes.
In this video, Zeldin cited reports Power Forward Communities, which is one of these other left-wing groups, a group linked to Democrat Stacey Abrams. Remember the
the governor of Georgia.
The governor, she ran for governor.
No, I know. She insists that
her organization received $2 billion after reporting just $100 in total revenue for the year before.
$2 billion.
So you want to wonder how these people get rich?
Mm-hmm.
This is the kind of crony. I don't know if you call it cronyism, but it's corruption.
Now, is this discovery from Elon Musk, Doge?
No, this isn't Elon Musk.
This is EPA.
This is Lee Zeldin. He's a former wasn't he a Republican chair, or he was a congressman?
He ran for a Republican in New York.
He was a New York congressman. He's a Republican.
All these secretaries, like Secretary of the EPA right now, Lee Zeldin, they all probably have been given their marching orders to do this kind of thing.
And these people, a lot of these people Trump hired, they don't need any motivation.
Right.
No. They're true blue good guys.
Listen, I'm not saying anything specific here, but we wonder how members of Congress get wealthy.
Right, that kind of stuff there.
Okay, so what happens? Do they give money to these shell organizations and then get money in return?
I'll tell you what happens. Again, I'm not going to speak about a specific name of a group or a specific person, but I can just tell you how this happens. There's $20 billion that the EPA under Biden did trying to hide, according to Zeldin, hiding the money. They want to dole it out to all these far left groups. The far left groups then put their money in the bank account, and then they give their CEO $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You see how this works?
Yes.
And they also, the workers of the NGO work for the Democratic Party in the next election.
Yes.
I tell you what.
It is corrupt as the day is long.
There's nothing been more important in the new Trump administration, and what Elon Musk is doing is finding out all this stuff that's going on and all this government corruption and waste. No wonder the left's hair's on fire.
Right.
We'll be back momentarily.
The views and opinions expressed in this broadcast may not necessarily reflect those of the American Family Association or American Family Radio.
Faith, family, freedom. American Family Radio.
Abraham Hamilton III.
If you really want to see the tides turning in our country, can I challenge you and encourage you? If the Lord could grab a hold of us in our family, you would see the tide in our politics turning.
The Hamilton Quarter, weekday afternoons at 5 Central on American Family Radio.
This is American Family Radio, a listener-supported ministry of the American Family Association.
American Family News, I'm Rusty Pugh. The Department of Education has announced plans to terminate half its workforce in a move that Education Secretary Linda McMahon calls painful but necessary. Mark Meredith has more from Washington.
The building that houses the Federal Department of Education is closed. Its doors are locked. The employees that are left are not allowed to go inside today. Officials saying that is standard security practice after mass layoffs, which were announced last night. What kind of impact will we see on America's students? Well, schools, of course, are open nationwide. Much of the department's work was focused on grants and loans, work that is likely to end up over at the Treasury Department. But for Democrats, this is another major blow. The department dates back to 1979, created under the Carter administration. Activists call plans to eventually shutter the whole thing heartbreaking.
Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick will meet with Ontario Premier Doug Ford tomorrow to discuss the ongoing trade war between the U.S. and Canada. This comes after Ford agreed to suspend a 25% surcharge on electricity exported from Canada to Michigan, Minnesota, and New York. Lutnick on what he expects from the meeting.
Canada is in a bit of flux, right? Trudeau left, Mark Carney came in. They're probably going to call an election in like 3 weeks. So I think it's just to level set things, make sure we know each other, and then we're going to negotiate with all of Canada.
The Senate Committee on Armed Services holding a hearing on the current readiness of the military joint forces. Senator Dan Sullivan welcoming the witness to the chamber and stressing the importance of the hearing.
My view, it's one of the most important hearings in the Senate for the year because there's very few other issues more important than the readiness of our United States military.
The hometown sheriff of a University of Pittsburgh student who disappeared while on spring break names a person of interest in the case. Chris DeMayo has more.
A spokesman for the Loudoun County Sheriff's Office in Virginia says Sudiksha Konanki disappeared while on vacation in the Dominican Republic. Security footage shows her walking on the beach with friends before going missing. The spokesman telling Fox News Digital that 24-year-old Joshua Ribe is a person of interest and has been interviewed at length on Konanki's disappearance. But he says it's still a missing persons case, not a criminal case. Chris DeMayo, Fox News.
A conservative political pundit says he understands the frustration President Trump is having with a Republican member of Congress who seems to always vote no when it comes to appropriations. Chad Groening has more.
President Trump lashed out at Kentucky Representative Thomas Massie, declaring that the congressman should be primaried in 2026, pledging to, quote, lead the charge against him. The president says Massie has become an automatic no vote on just about everything, despite the fact that he has always voted for continuing resolutions in the past. Trump likened Massie to former Wyoming Congresswoman Liz Cheney, who was involved in the now-defunct January 6th committee and is a staunch critic of the president. Trump helped Cheney get defeated for re-election in 2022. Massie has fired back and is hoping to use the fire from Trump as a fundraising opportunity. Walker Wildmon is the CEO of AFA Action, the political arm of the American Family Association.
The frustration coming from President Trump is easily understood from his perspective because one of the issues with Representative Thomas Massie, as conservative as he is when it comes to his voting record, he does quite literally vote no on every single budget proposal that comes before Congress. So there is some frustration when members of Congress are always known for voting no.
Wildman believes opposing President Trump at this juncture does come with risk.
Whether we like it or not, the Republican Party for now is President Trump's party. And if you're going to buck President Trump and you call yourself a Republican, you're going to face some difficulty. Now, whether this will pan out and whether Massie will be primaried, who knows? But opposing President Trump at this juncture does come with risk, and I think that's what Massie's seeing here.
I'm Chad Groening.
Wall Street keeps shaking. The S&P 500 rose 0.1% after losing nearly all of its initial leap of 1.3%. The Dow Jones Industrial Average went from an early gain of 287 points to a loss of 301 points, while the Nasdaq Composite rose 0.8%. More news online at afn.net and download the AFN mobile app. I'm Rusty Pugh.
AFA Action takes attacks on the family seriously. The enemies of the family constantly employ new tactics to try to sneak past our radar. They know if we stand together, their evil plans will fail. Your gift to AFA Action allows us to stay vigilant against their onslaught. And if you give this month, you'll receive access to the Cultural Institute video When Your Faith is Illegal by Frank Harbor on AFA Stream as our thanks. You can make your gift today at afaaction.net.
Today's Issues continues on AFR with your host, Tim Wildmon, president of the American Family Association.
Hey, real quick, folks. By the way, welcome back to Today's Issues. Today's Issues is the name of this show on the American Family Radio Network. Thanks for listening to AFR. We got some tours lined up for the year that I wanted to tell you about real quick. If you want to go with us, we'd love to have you. We got a Colonial, Williamsburg, Jamestown, and Yorktown. That's in June and September. And that's back-to-back with our Washington, D.C. and Mount Vernon tours. So you can do one or the other, or you can want to stay with us Saturday to Saturday. You can spend the whole week with us. We'll take care of you. And all you got to do is get to these places. Get to Washington, D.C. For the Williamsburg tour, we meet at the airport there in D.C., and we drive down, we bus down. So that's in June and September. Those tours are halfway to two-thirds full. So, but it's a lot of fun, and people like you who listen to AFR from all over the country will be on those tours. Also, Stephen McDowell, the president of the Providence Foundation, a real historian, will be with us on the tours to talk and give commentary all along the way. The stories Stephen tells is fascinating. He's like a walking encyclopedia of American history. And then in October, we got a brand new tour that Wesley and Walker are doing. Allison, my wife, and I, we're going. Stephen McDowell and his wife's going. Tim Barton from Wall Builders, we're all going on this tour of Boston, in the greater Boston area, Ed's old stomping ground. So it's going to be a new trip for us, but we got so many fun things planned and interesting things planned during that week in Boston. That's in October. That we got like 75 people now signed up for that one, and well, like 100 seats available. So you can see we'll be filling up that one pretty quick. So one other thing, and we'll be talking about this more, but we set the itinerary for March of next year, like a year from now. There's going to be two tours. One is Israel. That's our annual trip to the Holy Land in March. And then back-to-back with that is the Footsteps of Paul tour that Wesley and Walker are leading. So you can do both of those back-to-back if you want to, or you can do one or the other.
Yep. That sounds amazing.
Yeah, it's
Footsteps of Paul.
A lot of time in Greece, the Footsteps of Paul. If you want to read about any of what I just said, all the information is at the website I'm about to give you, WILDMON group.com. Right, Wesley?
That's right. Yep. Wildmongroup.com.
WILDMON group.com. The D.C. tour, the Williamsburg tour, the Boston tour, and then the 2026 March trips to Israel and Greece are Footsteps of Paul. Everything, the itinerary, everything you need to know, the pricing, everything is available at that website, wildmongroup.com. Good morning, Steve.
Good morning. Just sit right back and you hear a tale of a fateful trip.
Oh, talking about our tours?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
3 hour tour.
That's a good selling point, Steve.
I hope we're not going to, well, I don't think we're not planning on being castaways.
I hope not.
On a Greek island somewhere. All right, so Tim, Ed, Wesley, and now Steve Paisley Jordahl joins us.
Good morning.
Good morning, Brother Steve. What is your first story?
Well, I heard you talking earlier about a certain Rosie O'Donnell who went off to Ireland.
Well, she went off all right. Off the rails.
President Trump is actually speaking into this. I'd like to let you hear what he has to say.
This is when I don't like. This is bad Trump usually, but go ahead.
Well, cut 16.
My fellow Americans, this is the greatest achievement of my administration to date. Rosie O'Donnell has deported herself out of the United States of America. She moved to Ireland. So much for luck of the Irish. That's a lot of bad luck when you look at it. Quite frankly, the worst luck the world has ever seen. But I just got off the phone with Ireland, and they said to me, "Sir, Rosie O'Donnell is now in our country. What do we do, sir? I said, you have to keep her. They said, but sir, she's going to cause another famine. I said, that's your problem now. You have to keep her. Don't you dare send her back. If you send her back, I'm going to hit you with 4,000% tariffs if you send her back. We're not going to let it happen.
Who was that? That wasn't really Trump.
That
That
really
sounded
Trump.
just like him. Who was that?
That was Sean Farash, who's a Trump impersonator or conservative blogger or podcaster.
That's a guy who, when President Trump got elected in November, said, happy days are here again.
Yes.
Because now he could have continued doing the Trump imitation, but with 4 years of Trump, God willing.
So you could have fit a 4,000% tariff if you try to send her back, huh?
And seriously, this is really the truth. Do you know who's in Ireland today besides
Marco Rubio, right?
Marco Rubio, on behalf of the president. President Trump is sending.
He's trying to secure a deal that they keep Rosie O'Donnell no matter what happens.
It might be why he's there, but Trump is following Rosie over to Ireland.
Ireland.
That was funny.
I didn't understand the crack about she's going to cause a famine.
I don't know.
Could you explain that?
There's a long history there.
Yeah, I know.
Between Trump and Rosie O'Donnell.
Yeah.
And Trump prevailed.
Yeah.
Well, hey, listen, I hope, like the Pied Piper, that many Hollywood stars follow her out.
Yep. So far, none that I've heard of, but you never know.
They just blow hards. If Trump gets elected, I'm leaving. Then they never do.
No. You know why?
Why?
Because this country rocks.
Right. Duly noted. All right, Steve, next story.
All right. To say that we dodged a bullet when we elected Donald Trump, he literally dodged a bullet, but the country did too. I want to play you a tale that Speaker Johnson told of a meeting he had with Donald Trump. I
thought it was with Joe Biden.
I'm sorry, with Joe Biden. Yeah, my bad.
It's a big difference.
Yeah, it is a big difference.
Yeah.
Speaker Johnson had this meeting with Joe Biden, and this is a little longer cut. It's about 2.5 minutes, but I think it's worth the time to listen to what was going on in the White House. Cut 11.
January a year ago, almost exactly a year ago, I had been asked, I became Speaker in October 2023, and there were all sorts of big national security concerns and everything going on, and I started requesting a meeting with the president because, you know, I'm kind of old school. I'm a constitutional law guy. The Speaker of the House should be able to talk to the president, especially in times of great national interest and calamity. But they wouldn't let me meet with him, and his staff kept getting excuses. This went on for like 8 or 9 weeks. I'm sorry, Mr. Speaker, he doesn't have time. What are you talking about? I'm second in line of the presidency. He has time. I need to talk to him. We had, I can't say the classified parts, but we had some big national concerns at the time that I was losing sleep over. Finally, I just went to the Hill Press Corps and I said, the president is not being allowed to meet with the speaker. There's a problem. So they started putting pressure on him.
I remember
Long
that.
story short, they finally relented. They invited me to the White House. I show up and I realize it's actually an ambush because it's not just me and the president. It's also Kamala Harris, Chuck Schumer, Hakeem, you know, the CIA director, everybody. And then, so I walked in the Oval and, I know what this is. They're going to hotbox the speaker on Ukraine funding. That's what it was. This is probably third week of January. We sit down, we're in the midst of it, and the whole conversation, and I'm going, we don't need to have this conversation. The president reaches over just like this. We're sitting right next to the fireplace in the Oval, and he grabs my arm and he says, the speaker and I just need a couple minutes together. Would y'all just leave us alone? And I looked up on the faces of some of the staff standing around the wall, and they're like, oh, no, he did it. So he called it. He's the commander-in-chief. So everybody leaves, and he and I are standing awkwardly in the middle of the Oval Office right over the rug by that coffee table. And I said, Mr. President, thanks for the moments. This is very important. I got some big national security things I need to talk to you about that I've heard, and I think you know, and what do we do? But first, real quickly, Mr. President, can I ask you a question? I cannot answer this from my constituents in Louisiana. Sir, why did you pause LNG exports to Europe? Like, I don't understand, liquefied natural gas is in great demand by our allies. Why would you do that? Because you understand, we just talked about Ukraine. You understand you're fueling Vladimir Putin's war machine because they got to get their gas from him, And he looks at me, stunned with this, and he said, I didn't do that. And I said, Mr. President, yes, you did. It was an executive order, 3 weeks ago. And he goes, no, I didn't do that. And he's arguing with me. I said, Mr. President, respectfully, could I go out here and ask your secretary to print it out? We'll read it together. You definitely did that. And he goes, oh, you talk about natural gas. Yes, sir. He said, no, you misunderstand. He said, what I did is I signed this thing we're gonna conduct a study on the effects of LNG. I said, no, you're not, sir. You paused it. I know. I have the terminal, the export terminals in my state. I talked to those people this morning. This is doing massive damage to our economy, national security. It occurred to me, Barry, he was not lying to me. He genuinely did not know what he had signed. And I walked out of that meeting with fear and loathing because I thought, we're in serious trouble. Who is running the country? Like, I don't know who put the paper in front of him, but he didn't know.
Wow.
Great.
What was the talk show? Who was he talking
That was Barry Weiss, the former New York Times reporter.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, we can no longer be accused of speculating.
Right.
That's
the Speaker of the
that's
House.
the Speaker of the House. So what we all thought and believed was going on, now we have evidence and confirmation.
So, yeah, we talked, I think, yesterday a little bit about majority of the executive orders and documents that Joe Biden signed were actually signed by what's called an auto pen. Do you remember this conversation? It's an actual physical machine where you put a pen in a machine that holds it to the paper, and then the computer actually traces the signature of the person, and Joe Biden in this case. And you could look because they're identical. You could, like a mirror image of each other. No one signs their name that identically,
right?
Twice. So it's definitely, they know which ones are by the auto pen, and almost all, not all, but almost all of the documents that were signed during his
like executive order documents. Yeah.
Well, bills. I don't
Yeah.
know. Well, sometimes if he has a signing ceremony in the White House and hands out pens, obviously he's signing that.
Sure.
Right.
Can you imagine Speaker Johnson leaving the White House going, I'm number 3 in line to be president, and I don't even know what's going on. I mean, I do and I don't. You know, I know that the president is incapacitated, basically, from a mental standpoint. And what do we do about it? You know what? Couple, 3 things about this. I don't want to revisit this too long because we've talked about it a lot. Okay, the Democrats deserve to be in the minority right now and to not be in the White House for this reason alone. They put our country at risk by knowingly having a fellow in the White House in charge who was mentally compromised, did not know what was going on, had to be shuffled around. And, of course, the whole world saw that in June of 2024 at the debate when he was staring off into space. And we were being gaslighted by the Democrats and the media and the White House. Now, we were being gaslighted, but guess what? We all knew what was going on here. It was everything I just described. Do you remember that photograph of him over there in Italy, I think it was? And you got these 4 or 5 European leaders up there, and Biden's just wandering off out into the field.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then Karine Jean-Pierre says, oh, that's normal. He just trying to point out something over there.
The debate was one more blow in the media's
lack of credibility. Well, then he was after the whole world saw what was going on at the debate. Then he was pressured by Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer and others to say he wasn't going to run.
That's right.
And then I'm thinking, well, wait a minute.
They're the one. Yeah.
You're not going to run because you're incapable of handling it, but the Democrats going to leave you for 7 more months while the world's on fire. That's doesn't give you any comfort at all. So the Democrats. I don't know who's in charge of their party now, but whoever the power brokers are, and maybe there's a power vacuum there. I don't know right now, but they don't get me wrong. I'm glad they lost. Okay, right. Because President Trump and the conservatives are doing great things for our country right now. So I'm glad they lost, but I'm just saying, if you don't care who won or lost and you want to look at what happened, the Democrats would have had a much better chance to keep the White House and maybe keep the Congress had Biden stepped down along the way, maybe at the midterm, and maybe they couldn't make him. Maybe Jill Biden was blocking them, and because she was probably the most power hungry person in the world, knowing she sees her husband all day, every day, and she knows what's going on, and she's like weekend at Bernie's.
Yeah, propping him up. Yeah.
Go prop Joe up today. Give him some drugs or something. But we got to stay in the White House. I'm Joe Biden. I want to have access to all this, all these perks. But anyway, they would have done better, politically speaking, in terms of having a chance, had they gone through a nomination process.
That's right.
And not just coronating Kamala Harris, which everybody knew was a high risk at losing. And now I don't know if they could have come up with anybody better, Steve, or not. But
not a very deep bench.
Not a very deep bench. But I think, to me personally, that governor of Pennsylvania or the governor even of Michigan would have had a better chance to.
Well, the governor of Pennsylvania was Jewish, and we know what's happening on the campuses and what the Democrat Party.
Yeah, but he would have had a better chance of beating Trump than she did.
Yeah,
Kamala Harris.
For one thing, you would have been able to some extent, run away from the Biden economy.
Yes.
You could have run away from it as a Democrat, as
right.
As a.
We're going to change these things.
We're going to change these things, but if you're going to stick with Kamala Harris, and in the way it was done, was not democratic, she was democratically selected. Now you're stuck with the last 4 years, and that's a great part of what sunk the Democratic Party. You would have made the election about Donald Trump if you have Shapiro or somebody else.
Right, that's right.
As opposed to making it about the last 4 years under Biden.
And Kamala Harris, with all, should I say due respect? Listen, I don't know her. Maybe she may be.
She's totally different than what she appears.
She may be a really nice person, just one-on-one with folks. I mean, I don't know her. I'm just saying we all knew she was not fit to be president whatsoever.
3-5.
Not even close.
Meal.
She was a DEI hire.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
3-5.
3-5 short of a Happy Meal?
Yeah.
Well, listen, she was elected senator in California, and she was elected statewide as attorney general. So she did have some background of success in politics.
But she ran in 2016 and she was the first to drop out of about 18.
Yes. Woefully unqualified intellectually and her inability to articulate anything.
Or in debate.
Yes, she is a terrible candidate. President Obama knew this. He tried to get the Democrats to steer away from coronating her behind the scenes, but he knew such a good chance she would lose. So, but the problem is they were stuck.
Reminiscent memory lane here.
Well, they were stuck with her because she was a woman of color.
Yeah.
And you can't say no, you can't run because then she would have said, well, you're not letting me run because I'm a woman of color.
Therefore, you're racist.
They would have said, no, we're not letting you run because you're going to lose because you're a terrible candidate. No, you're not letting me run because you see what I'm saying? But she was originally a DEI hire.
That's right.
Because Biden
made it specific.
Yeah, he said you have to be these things or you won't be my running mate.
I am going to choose a black woman to be my running mate.
Right.
And he's not even a biologist. I don't know.
I don't know how you would know.
I was right there.
The Democrats seem to be unusually wed to this next man or woman up code ever since Obama. So they had to know that Hillary Clinton wasn't real. I mean, she was articulate. Yeah, she had all the degrees and everything, but her likability, her favorables were.
When you're talking about when she ran in
2016,
she at least was smart.
Well, yeah, but
she no. I'm saying is
Hillary Clinton, yeah.
So her favorability ratings were in the toilet, if I can quote Archie Bunker.
She just wasn't very likable.
But she wasn't likable. But she at least was very politically astute.
But she was the
as
next
opposed
woman
to
up.
Kamala Harris.
She was the next woman up. Remember, they bypassed Bernie Sanders, and everybody thought that he might have been the next person up. But then Kamala, Joe Biden was the next person up, and then Kamala. They just can't break the chain.
Well, anyway, to the original story. This is the Speaker of the House saying on the record his horror story of the person who's supposedly in charge of the most powerful nation on earth not being in charge of the most powerful nation on earth.
For how many months did that go on?
Yes.
Next story, Steve.
All right.
We got the cat story, Steve.
Yeah.
We're about out of time here.
Yeah, we can do the.
Maybe do 2. I don't care. But
No, well, let
I
me
wanna get to
start
the cat
here.
Story.
The new owner of a Tesla is Donald Trump. He can't drive it, but he owns it now.
Secret Service won't let him drive, probably. Will
That's
they?
correct.
Right.
But he in solidarity with Elon Musk, he decided to buy a Tesla. Not that Elon needs the money, and not that
Personally buy one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this was him at the White House. He was talking to his to the press who was there, and I think you're going to hear Peter Ducey talking. Cut 9.
Hello, President Trump. Are you looking to buy or lease today?
Well, I'm going to buy, and I'm going to buy because, number one, it's a great product, as good as it gets, and number two, because this man has devoted his energy and his life to doing this. I think he's been treated very unfairly by a very small group of people. And I just want people to know that you can't be penalized for being a patriot, and he's a great patriot.
There is
Good for him.
There is now
Good for
Trump.
him.
There is now Elon derangement syndrome. It's a thing.
Yes.
Well, Elon Musk is only, to me, pointing out government waste and fraud and abuse. Who can be against that? I don't understand.
The entirety of the Democratic Party and liberals in
but
Hollywood.
the question would be why?
Yes.
You know?
Why indeed?
I don't think they have good motives.
No, as we said, I mean, we might have talked about this in our story meeting. To me, it is because the left wants the administrative state.
Yes.
They deep down hate the Constitution because the Constitution wants separation of powers, whereas the left wants aggregation of powers.
Yes.
And Elon Musk, who is associated with Donald Trump, so 2 strikes against him, is trying to expose the corruption of the administrative state, and that's why the left is going after.
Good for Elon Musk, and I hope he stays with it. And I'm glad President Trump is sticking with him because a wedge, I'm sure, is trying to be driven between the two. And President Trump yesterday symbolically said, "I'm standing, and I appreciate what Elon Musk is doing for our country, and I'm going to buy a Tesla just to prove it."
Right.
Yeah, to further prove it. Now we got a really feel good story.
Yeah, we do. Miss Catherine Kiefer lost her house in the Palisades fire, which isn't good. She thought she lost her cat as well. The cat's name was Aggie. It was a Maine Coon. They're very loving cats. And so she had been mourning this, but all of a sudden, guess who shows up? Aggie shows up. Aggie had been hanging out somewhere in the ashes, I guess. She was near starvation, but they got her in time and took her to the vet. And now mom and cat mom and cat are reunited.
Because cats, in a lot of ways, are different than dogs. Dogs are going to hang close to their owners, but when things are like fire and that kind of thing, sometimes cats will leave and hide just for their own self-preservation. Isn't that what happened? The cat took off, and she thought that it perished as the fire swept through, but apparently the cat...
Found a whole 9 lives were taken up on that. But.
Yeah. That's a great story. And also, I was reading a story earlier, about a week ago, about a dog that traveled like 50 miles to get back to its owner after the owner got separated from the dog.
I love those kind of stories.
Yeah. The dogs just have a sense of direction.
Yeah.
There's a movie I used to watch with my little kids called Homeward Bound. It was about
Yeah.
that or something.
It was 2 dogs and a cat.
Yeah.
wasn't it?
Yeah.
2 dogs and a cat.
They got lost, and they
got
found their way
lost.
back.
And they
you know what was amazing about them? They knew English.
I know,
they talked.
that was.
They could speak.
They talked
That
to
was-
one another.
One of them was Michael J. Fox.
Yeah.
The voice, I think.
was.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to this program, Today's Issues. We invite you to keep listening throughout the day to American Family Radio. And we'll be back here tomorrow at 10:05 Central Time for more of Today's Issues.
And my father, your